The following program is an official presentation from Plastic Battles.
Welcome, I guess. Is that what I'm supposed to say? This is JOETOGRAPHER episode 1. There are other toy photography shows on YouTube, but I could not find one that was G.I. Joe focused. And that's what I was looking for. And since it doesn't seem to exist, I've decided to kind of make one. I had done Plastic Battles Radio as a podcast a few years ago. There's a couple videos based on that, but most of it was just audio. The issue with that podcast format was too much editing, hours and hours and hours of editing. This is something where I'm going to try to keep the editing to a minimum so that I can create more videos and we can do things like review vintage toy photography, talk about modern toy photography. I will have guests on. Some will be pre-recorded, maybe some will be live in the future, and we'll basically treat this as the G.I. Joe toy photography show, if that's for lack of a better term. For this first episode, I will be breaking down with a guest one of these three, the first in a set of three G.I. Joe dossiers from the Belgium and the Netherlands from 1989. This is a pretty thick booklet. There's a lot of photos in here, so I've broken it into 3 parts. For part 1, I am joined by Christopher Criley, aka Skydrowalker, probably the most prolific G.I. Joe toy photographer on Instagram as far as output and style. He's been doing this for years, and he's one of my favorites. And so having him on for the first one just kind of made a lot of sense. So what we're going to do is we're going to dive into the first 6 or 7, can't remember, photos, and we'll break them down. Now, like I said, this is I'm new to this. I've been doing live shows, videos on Instagram on Thursday nights for years. That's something I'm comfortable with. This YouTube thing, I've done a few things in the past, but not much. So it might be a little rough around the edges. There are things about YouTube. There's a certain way to talk. There's a certain way to design thumbnails. There's a certain way to ask for, subscriptions and things like that. And I don't want to do any of that. I just want to make this show, talk about G.I. Joe photos. And if you watch it, great. And if you don't watch it, okay, that's fine too. So that's kind of how I'm going to approach this. It's going to be a little rough around the edges. Over time, I am assuming as I do more of these, I'll get a little bit more comfortable and a little bit more polished with it. First time using StreamYard. So that was a little rough at first. I think I'm starting to get a handle of it. One thing I did have an issue with in this specific episode is that I have a microphone, which you can't really see, but it's right here. And I was wearing AirPods at the time for the audio in. For whatever reason, in this first episode, the AirPods overrode the microphone for the audio in. So my audio was recorded with the AirPods instead of the microphone. So you will notice that the audio on this maybe isn't up to snuff, but that corrected that because I've already recorded episodes 2 and 3, and it's fine there. So things like that may pop up from time to time as I'm getting a handle on this, but we'll see where it goes. So, okay, enough of this stuff. Let's get into episode 1 with Skydrowalker starting now.
Now hit it.
Skydrow's here. Hi, Skydrow.
Let's go. Hello.
Thanks for joining me for the inaugural first ever episode of JOETOGRAPHER. How's it feel to be the first?
Oh, it's such a pleasure. I'm honored.
Yeah, right.
I'm honored to be on with such a legend.
Okay. All right. I was going to end the recording.
All right.
But but yeah, this is cool. So you are definitely who I wanted to have on for the first episode, just based on your love of this old photography. I know you were a big fan of like that video I did a while back, the 1990 Benelux catalog, when I was doing the more of the Plastic Battles radio show. Um, so it just made sense to have you on for the first one. So I'm gonna share. I'm gonna do a quick share of your Instagram, and then we could talk about you a little bit, and then we'll get into what we're gonna talk about today. Is I've got these dossiers from basically Belgium, Netherlands, from like 1989, and we're gonna talk about there's three of them. We're gonna talk about the first one, and I got these from Belgium a while back. So we're going to talk about. I've split this into three parts. This will be part one of Dossier 1. All right. So let's take Chris. Let's take a look at your Instagram. So now, bear with me, everybody, because it's the first time I'm doing this. So it's the first time I'm using StreamYard as well. All right, switching over to your Instagram.
Let's move them out.
All right, so let's talk about you a little bit. You've been on Instagram for quite a while. Here's some of your later photos. Again, this is kind of weird because it puts these like big bars between. But let's open up one of these here, if it lets me. Look at what it's doing. What is going?
That's so wild.
What
You
is
might not-
going on?
You know, opening
hold
a photo might not be in the cards. We might just
What?
be looking at little thumbnails.
What is this? What is this experience?
Oh,
What?
malfunction.
What? Instagram is broken. All right, you know what we'll do? I got an idea. Hold on. Here's what I'll do. I've got an idea. Maybe that will work here. So I'm gonna try this and see what happens. I tricked you, Instagram. All right. So, but the aspect ratio is weird because the window, it refuses to hide these bars. So maybe even no, I guess I can't. All right. Well, we'll have to talk about like just what we can see. But yeah, so how long you've been doing toy photography? Give us a quick background if you're not familiar with Skydrowalker, like give me like a brief introduction to yourself.
Well, I was painting during the pandemic and wanted to paint some action figures from my childhood. So I picked up the modern era mainframe and beachhead from a local toy store and had every intention of taking them outside, taking a photograph with my phone, and painting that photograph. And then I realized how many different photographs I had taken in the amount of time that it would have taken me to start an oil painting.
Right.
So I thought to myself, this is so much more fun. And it's just as expressive as oil painting, and it's so much faster.
Well, yeah, it can be. It can be faster, depending on your setup. Like it's faster if you have like the figures and you have the dioramas and you've got like everything set up ahead of time. However, if you were to like build dios and stuff, it might take you just as long as a painting, right?
Some oil paintings took me years to complete because to apply layers of oil paints, you have to wait for a particular layer to dry, or it's going to crack years later, and that layer is just going to fall off. So applying oil paint layers takes years. So this was like traveling at light speed.
So have you always like been doing like had a background in painting, or like where did that all start?
I think I was painting for almost 15 years before the pandemic. So I had a pretty deep painting background. I had actually sold paintings out of the back of my car. So I was a
Oh,
sold
really?
artist,
Crazy.
which was awesome to me because I, had that classic selling paintings out of the back of my car.
That's
Outside of a
crazy.
bar, no less. Outside of a bar, no less. I think it was to cover a tab that night.
That's
I can't
hilarious.
remember. To be honest with you, but I know I sold a couple of paintings outside of a bar for some guy for his girlfriend, which was
That's nuts.
awesome. It was awesome to me.
All right, so you have a creative background, and you're like, I love GI Joe and all this stuff, and I want to paint some GI Joe stuff, and then you're like, man, this could take me forever. And this is
Oh yeah,
pandemic, you said?
yeah. This roughly about the pandemic, I love GI Joe. Grew up with the cartoon, and I grew up with
Mm-hmm.
the O-ring figures. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
the vehicles secondhand because I was born in '84. I was only 10 in 1994. So
Oh, that's crazy.
all
Yeah.
the vintage GI Joe stuff was at garage sales and flea markets for pennies on the dollar. So my
Mm-hmm.
dad would go around and just scoop it up. He'd come home every weekend with something else fantastic. Like one weekend it would be a Terradrome. Of
Oh
course
man,
it'd be secondhand, it'd be covered in dust, but man, I would love it because it was complete. I'd love it. I'd love it.
that's awesome.
One weekend was Terradrome, one weekend was the Flag, another weekend it was the Mobile Command Center, and it's just one weekend after another.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's when people like me were of my age were going to college and whatnot, and
Yeah.
you're just starting to go to college, and while you're at college, your parents do a garage sale and put all your toys out there because you're not going to want them anymore, right? And then
And
you
that was
come
a
back from
different age.
college. Yeah, you come back from college and you're like, where are all my toys? And they're like, oh, we sold them all at a garage sale. I don't know how many times I've heard that story from people. Didn't
Oh
happen
yeah.
exactly that same way with me, but close enough. But that's
And
crazy.
that
So,
generation of parents, they
mhm.
did not care about toys at all. They wanted them
Oh
out
no,
of there
no,
fast.
which is kind of funny because they're the ones that spent all the money on them in the first place. You know what I'm
Well,
saying?
sure, you think they want to recoup some of that loss, like
Yeah,
diapers.
yeah, they're either giving them away to kids in the neighborhood or selling them for nothing at garage sales. Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, at the time, it's the same thing as like my dad, going to Vietnam. While he was in Nam, my grandmother sold all his baseball cards or threw them away or something. Um, we're
Oh
talking
man.
baseball cards now that'd be worth a lot of money, because he was a kid in the 50s, So, um, yeah, it's kind of crazy how like it just history repeats itself, but just in a slightly different way. So you
Oh
evolved
sure.
into photography and stuff, and so you've been doing this what now 5 years? Is it or
Yeah.
is that right? See, it feels
Yep.
like
Yes,
longer to
sir.
me.
It does. It feels like it feels like a decade. It feels
Yeah,
like 10 years.
but you've progressed a lot during that period where, like, you are probably one of the most prolific as far as like the volume of shots that you do. You know what I mean? That you put out there on Instagram. I think I'm guilty of taking long, long breaks between photos for different reasons, but I can go on Instagram any day and see like 3 or 4 new photos that you've posted. It's pretty insane the output. And they're all
Oh,
super high quality. You could just tell like what's on screen right now. You know what I mean? Like the lighting, the sets, and you like to do full scenes, right? That's kind of your style. I feel like you have like a full cinematic, widescreen kind of look where there's a lot going on in the frame, you know, but it's always very interesting.
I like people's imaginations to play when they're looking at my photography, just as much as my imagination is playing when I look at it. Like I can animate this photo.
Hmm.
There's a before, a middle, a beginning, a middle, and an end to this photo. So it's
Hmm.
it's all playing around in my head. I guess that's the child part of it, and that's what I love
Yeah,
about it.
yeah. I mean, like like what we have on screen right now. There's a lot of life and motion and movement in this photo. there's you've got, you know, 5 figures in a diorama scene, you know. So you're telling a story and there's a lot of action in your photos. Whereas as opposed to like, you know, kind of a glamour shot, you know, of a single figure just kind of standing there. You know what I mean? There's always something going on in your photos. So that's
Oh
why I'm
yeah.
a big fan of your work, you know,
Thank you
and
so
stuff like
much.
yeah, anytime, man. Like this is fantastic. Like Helix's pose here is awesome. Do you hold her up with a wire in this shot, or how do you have her propped up?
Yeah, there's a wire, and it's hid as well as I could behind that guy, but you know, every once in a while it creeps up, and
Hmm.
I'm a really simple guy. I don't edit on a computer. I just edit on free Snapseed on my phone.
Oh, that's crazy.
Photoshop for the poor. Snapseed is what I use if anybody's interested. Super
Yeah,
easy
that's
to use. Lots of buttons, lots of different things you can do with it.
yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I always do post production, so like for me, it's sometimes it's a pain where you know you try to hide the wire, but you know I don't necessarily always hide it perfectly because I can like Photoshop it out later. But then there are times I run into a situation where I'm like, oh man, I've got to clone out that area, and it's on like this heavy, you know, patterned background where I'm like, this is going to take me a while to blend, you know.
Oh
So
yeah.
it's a good lesson. It's like do as much as you can in camera, so you have to do as little later as far as post processing. But yeah, these are great, man. I think anybody who doesn't follow Skydrow should go do so immediately. I mean, like you could just see how many photos you output. It's always fascinating. So, and I love that you use dinosaurs in your photos. Uh, you're one of the few people that I've seen. In fact, I can't think of anybody else right now that uses dinosaurs in Joe shots. So, big fan of that. Uh, if you go back in my feed far enough, I've done it a few times with the O-ring figures. So I always love mixing dinos in. Yeah.
True G.I. Joe fans will know that Michael Crichton stole that idea from G.I.
Hmm.
Joe.
Yeah. If you are in the know, that with Primordial Plot, correct? That's the Sunbow
That's
episode.
right.
That's the Sunbow episode. So if you watch Primordial Plot, which came out in what was that 1986 episode, or was it 85?
Yeah. It, it,
Uh,
I think it was written in 85 but aired in 86.
yes. So and that predates Jurassic Park. And if you watch Primordial Plot, you're like, this is literally the plot to Jurassic Park.
Almost exactly, except you replace the people with Joes, the scientists with Joe.
It's hilarious.
Oh, it's
But
so
yeah.
great.
All right. Awesome. All right. So we're going to switch it up now. We're going to get into this catalog, G.I. Joe Dossier
Oh,
1.
I'm so excited. Let's go.
So Skydrow has chosen 6 photos out of I think there's 17 in this photo, or in this dossier. So we're going to go through the first 6 with Skydrow here. It's Skydrow's choice.
Oh no! Giant hailstone!
We're going to start in the Arctic. Now, all right. You chose this one. I love this photo. I mean, I'm going to say I love every photo in this catalog because these are all like absolutely amazing photos. However, now also too, I wanted to add, I will have these photos up in high res on plasticbattles.net under the inspiration section. So anybody who's watching, if you want to take, compression quality on your phone, you might be looking at it on your phone. You might be, the YouTube might not be super crisp, but I'll have a high res images on plasticbattles.net, so you can review them there also while you're listening to this if you want to see them at a better quality. So I just want to add that. But Skydrow, before we talk about this, I just want to play this. Hold on one sec.
Charles?
Oh, hold on, wait a minute. Wait 1 second. I think I'm onto something here. This is pure snow. It's everywhere. Have you any idea what the street value of this mountain is? Charles. Wait a minute, hold it. Ah! Outrageous! I think I froze the left half of my brain! Look! I can't move my right arm!
Every time I see this photo, there's just so much snow in it. I think of that clip. It's from Better Off Dead, if anybody doesn't know. Most of my video clips that we'll play over the course of the show are like weighted toward Better Off Dead. But so anyway, all right, let's go back. Let's go back to the.
Oh, he starts doing the windmill. Oh, that's so awesome.
So, all right, why is this in your top 6?
You know, this feels cold. The lighting coming up from behind is it could either be a sunset or a sunrise, and it just looks so cold there.
Yeah, I mean, the Dio set is obviously, I mean, we're talking 3 3/4 inch, right? So we were looking at photos from you and it was all classified scale, but this is still a large diorama, whatever this is in, right?
Oh,
Um,
huge.
yeah, like the mountains, I can't tell if they're like paper mache or if it could be some sort of cloth material over top of something else. And the snow maybe is, baking soda, could be just fake snow, could be, there is a texture to it, which is nice. And it's hard to tell here, but if you look close enough, there is a little bit of a glint, like real snow in some spots, a little bit of a shine and like, how snow sparkles from time to time. But yeah, I, any feeling on how this is now? It's a vertical portrait shot. This catalog has a mix. It's a spread. I've obviously left off the other side of the saddle stitch, the other side of the foldable booklet, where it's just got text, you know what I mean? So, it'll have text on one side. I've left that out. So they've done this one in a vertical format. Any feelings on the composition that we're looking at here?
Well, one thing I love is how far up the horizon is on this, and it really gives you that sense of distance between where the top of that hill is in the background and where the vehicle's sitting. You really, it's so deep, and there's no breaks in that snow, so this is a hill that goes all the way up to the background and then up over that little hill, and then there's more to that back there, and then there's that little bit of white and the blue to show like the clouds in the sky. Just love the distance in this.
Yeah, I think just that little hint of the sky gives you that distance. If they had shot this in a way that it was just all snow all the way to the right corner, I don't think you would gotten the sense of depth that you do here, right? It's
No.
obviously a obviously there's a lot in focus here, right? This isn't a shallow depth of field at all. If it was, a lot of that would be so out of focus, you really wouldn't get a sense of what the terrain was like. And we have to remember this is shot in probably 1988. This is all film, right? This isn't like we shoot now, digital camera where you instant gratification to see what it looks like, right? So the other part of this too is a lot of these photos in these classic these classic catalogs from the 80s and whatnot, they're from that like 45-degree sort of angle, right? Kind of, it's not straight top down, but it's not ground level either. So it's more product photography so that you can get more of a view. Like if this was shot from ground, you wouldn't see the top of the wolf or the other side of the wolf. You would only see one side of the wolf. They take this little bit higher angle, so you get a 3/4 view of the vehicle. You're seeing the side, the front, the back, or the top. So that's typically why these are shot from this kind of angle. But
the wolf
it
doesn't
works.
look small in this photo. the wolf
Right. They
looks
did
real.
yeah.
It's a big looking vehicle still in this photo.
Yeah, especially with the bat hanging on. I think putting the bat hanging on to the side gives you more of a sense of scale because anyone who may have not seen a wolf at this time, right, if it was new, will have obviously had GI Joe figures or seen them, right, up to this point. So they have a sense for the size of that bat, right, of a normal figure. So you can compare that to the size of the wolf, and the lighting's interesting too. It's from the back, you know, it's from the back like left corner. So you've got that shadow cast in front of it. Well, it's an interesting choice to light it from the back and not from like the front. Any feelings on that?
I I think I think it really conveys the drama that's going on in this photo, and I
Mhm.
say that because there's sadly no track marks leading up to this stopping point, so I think this guy broke down in the middle of this tundra with an android. I don't think he's got a co-pilot in there, so he's all alone with an android
Yeah,
out there in the middle of the tundra,
yeah.
broken down.
I'm gonna have to open this one up myself, so I could zoom in on it. I don't know if there's someone in there. I feel like there is, but it's so hard to tell. There's something silver going on in there, and I can't
Yeah,
get a
there's
feel for. Oh, it's a viper. It's a viper. It is a viper.
okay, okay. All
Yep.
right. Well, he's got somebody to keep him company while they freeze to death
Which
because
makes
that wolf
sense.
is definitely
Yeah.
broken down out
Well,
there.
it's the Arctic. They got the human people inside, and you put the robot outside to freeze his ass off because he doesn't feel anything. Um, but what's interesting too, lighting wise, is so they have a single light source as if it's the Arctic sun here. Um, and they're not really, they may have a bounce in front to like bounce some of that light bats back softly, but not enough to cut the shadow. And I think that, obviously it's the style of whoever is shooting this, but it's also more, I guess, quote unquote realistic, where, you know, I feel like, when you're listening to people talk about toy photography, they're saying, light it, have the hair light and have the key light and have the, three triangle kind of a lighting setup going on. But it just depends. Like that's obviously what you might do in a production, like in a
Oh
fashion
yeah.
shoot, or you might do in a movie, right? But the real world, if we're setting this in the real world, if we're imagining this is the Arctic and it's out there in the middle of nowhere, and that's the Arctic sun, unless you have a bat off screen holding another light, or or a big bounce, a big mirror bounce to try to like light up the wolf just for whoever happens to tell a viper that happens to be broadcasting this. Yeah, that's not how it's going to be lit in real life. So, um, so I do like, and obviously lighting it from behind is more dramatic, like you said. So there is a sense of drama here, that I'm picking up.
It's very Antarctic lighting
Hmm.
where the sun doesn't set, so it doesn't get dark. It feels like this is the darkest that it will get. When you see
Yeah.
shadows that long, I
Uh-huh.
feel like this is like middle of the night kind of stuff.
Yeah, yeah, and I do feel like in the portrait, style here, there's a lot of empty space around it, which gives you the sense that it's kind of in the Arctic in the middle of nowhere. Very lonely, very desolate, very alone. Like this
Yes.
is like a scout. You know what I mean? Like they're scouting out there. Taking the wolf out to scout. By themselves, and in the framing of this, the composition, if I were to put some rules of third, like if I would put some lines over the top of this, I think it's like center, but to the right. Very interesting. Not dead center, right in the middle of the image. Um, so I really do like in the angles pointing toward the bottom left corner, the vehicle itself. I kind of like that. Gives you the sense of it's heading in that direction. You know what I mean? It's more about where it's going than where it came from. That's why you're not seeing a lot behind it. You're right. There is no track marks, which is interesting. In some of the photos we're going to look at, there are track marks behind vehicles. This one's an interesting omission on this one here.
It's a wolf laying in wait for its prey.
Ooh, I like that too. It's got the missiles ready to go.
Right.
Yeah, and you always think about these too. Like I said, film shot back in the 80s. You know, I always wonder, did the photographer shoot this and style it and build a diorama? Or did you have some, art directors and people, production assistants, like creating these scenes and the photographer just shoots it? You know what I mean? It's interesting. I wish we could get more insight into these photos, whether it's the European catalogs or the North American catalogs, about how that process went down. I've tried to track it down and I've kind of run into dead ends a couple times, but we have a whole backstory on like Hector Garrido and the package art and all that kind of stuff, but there's not a lot of insight to the photography.
That's the crazy thing about social media today, is because we have a little bit of insight on the classified photography with their product shots. And
Mm-hmm.
when Lenny starts to talk about the story he's trying to convey through his design through the photography, so he'll give like notes and things to their photographer, and they'll convey like the story they're trying to tell through their design, and he conveys that through his photography. So
Mm-hmm.
we have a little bit of insight on that part.
Sure. Yeah, that is cool. And we do know who the photographers are for Classified. They've been on podcasts talking about their work before. It's interesting that these photographers, these people who worked on these sets and photos, are just completely unknown. It's crazy.
Right?
All right.
Wild.
Yeah, all right, let's move on. I think we've talked about this one. We're going to go on to the next one. I think I could just layer this right on. I'm about to try. Boom. There we go.
Oh, let's go.
This is another great one, another vertical portrait style going on here. There's kind of like, it seems like a simple photo, but there's actually a lot going on here. I'll let you run with it.
Oh, there's a bunch here to the dio. That's the handmade dio. That's super simple. It could be anything. That could
Mhm.
be sheet metal back there in the background making that
Mhm.
building. Just like a sheet of metal from a building. That's wild that it could look so good with those two
Mhm.
simple lights coming off of it.
Mm-hmm. It could
And
be
then
a
you've
piece of
got
cardboard, a painted piece of cardboard for all we know, or
yes,
packaging material. Yeah.
yes. And then you've got this like little bit of chicken wire in the
Yeah.
foreground
Mhm.
making the security wire, and
Yep.
it's like you can tell it's there, but it's not taking away from the action figure. And they laid it right over the this is
Mhm.
they're selling this action figure and they just put something right over the top of it.
They
That's
literally could have just
awesome.
held this by hand in front of the camera. You don't even know if this is attached to anything. That's what I love about that. You know what I mean?
Oh,
It's
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 fantastic. And that little light from the window on the ground.
Yes, I was hoping you would hit on that. Yeah.
Oh, it's so good. It's so good. It really gives
Again,
you
and
life inside.
yeah, and that could literally just be a scrim, or what's the other word to use for that? But basically like a piece of cardboard where you cut out a few, rectangles and then shine a light through it to make it look like it's like some sort of window. Um, yeah, it looks good. And you know what? What's he guarding? Well, we'll give you a little peek. There's just a little bit of a triple T peeking out of the corner in the top left. And so now without that, like, you don't, is he just walking around? You don't really know. Now I know it's some sort of, I don't know if I want to call it a hangar, but a building housing military vehicles that he's guarding. You know what I mean?
Love that little peak of that vehicle up there in that corner.
Hmm. Yeah. And, seeing this right here now, when I got, I don't know, do you have history with Law and Order? Did you have them when you were younger?
I I did, and my dad was actually security police in the Air Force. So
Really?
I'm
Oh,
I'm
interesting.
super attached to Law and Order.
That's awesome. All right, so Law and Order, because of that emotional connection to your father, like kind of might hold a little bit more significance than say another random figure, right?
Yeah, absolutely,
That's
absolutely.
cool. That's cool. I like it. Yeah, that's I find certain feel like my dad was in Vietnam and he had, the kind of hats that in the fatigues and everything he brought back. He had one of those hats, two of them actually, that snapped up on the sides like Rakondo's hat. And because of that, and because Rakondo's fucking badass, he became my favorite figure. Um, okay, so seeing this and like this gets me personally for me. Like I had Law and Order and I got them for my birthday. I remember clearly 1987, March of 1987. Um, got them on my birthday and wanted to go play with them outside. And it was only like, barely 50 degrees, maybe high 40s, sunny, beautiful day. And I remember freezing my ass off outside trying to play with them and just being so mad that it wasn't just a little bit warmer where I could enjoy my time outside with them. That's my first memory of Law and Order. But I love these figures, and it gets me more pumped for the classified versions. Seeing these guys here.
I cannot wait for the classified figure. I am so excited for that.
Yeah, I have thanks to White Vegeta, who sent me for my birthday, again, a birthday reference this year, sent me a 3D printed Checkpoint Alpha classified scale. So I'm super pumped to have Law and Order and the checkpoint in a photo, a couple photos. I kind of hope we get an actual classified one, but we'll see. All right. Anything else to add to this one?
Oh gosh, no, I guess no. It's just such a fun photo. I
All
wonder
right,
where
cool.
he's going.
He's just kind of hanging out, Order looks like he's at alert. He's at attention.
Right? He definitely looks like he's seen something, but
Mhm.
Law, he's oblivious apparently.
Yeah. So again, very tall photo. In the way this is kind of cropped, the little bits of interest, the lighting, it got a sense of depth because you have the fence in the very, very foreground. Then you've got Law and Order. Then you've got the wall with some lighting, and then you've got the Triple T in the background in the corner. So there's a nice sense of depth to the photo, even though it's taken at a kind of a high 45-degree angle.
Look how that spotlight is coming right down on to Law, and it's like back in the back. It's back in the back, and you can tell there's distance between it, but it's spotlighting the figure. I love that. Love that.
Yeah, there is a lot of lighting going on here, which you got the two spotlights come down, you've got that kind of window, whatever light coming across. Then you've got a light on Law and Order themselves, and then there's, it's interesting because you've got Law and Order casting a shadow in one direction, but then you have a little bit of shadow coming from Order to the front too.
Yeah,
So
and they're different
there's
colors, so that could
Mhm.
definitely be moonlight.
Yeah, and
It's
yeah, there's obviously like a lot of sources of light here, and they're on a base, so you can imagine there's probably spotlights. There's different kinds of lighting happening. But yeah, this is a good example of how you can take a simple shot and just add a few elements, and all of a sudden it becomes way more interesting.
yeah, for sure.
All right, cool. All right, let's move on now to the next shot, and this one happens to be the thumbnail for this episode. It's our boy Crazy Legs. It's our boy Crazy Legs floating in the ether. Speaking of simple shots, but there's a lot to unpack here in one of the most, if not the most simple shot in the catalog.
This is huge. This shot's huge. And I say that because like this was taken during a time when, you know, we didn't have the digital net that we do now. So they were taking this probably on a fishing line, and
yeah,
this is so great.
Yeah, he had to be balanced just right if they're using fishing line or something, right? Yeah, they don't
Right,
have Photoshop then, right, to mask out anything. If they did it, they had to do it physically in a dark room, you know?
and he couldn't move either. Like he couldn't swing, so he had to be super stable sitting there. Maybe there's a rod. Maybe he's on a rod behind with that background, but that background is so far. That rod has got to be like what, like 4 or 5 feet long?
Yeah, and you know, we're in the era of that's probably just a physical you know, some like backdrop, like on a backdrop roll. And then, you know, he's got, you know, whatever they made the mountains out of too, which is very interesting, you know, just enough, right, to see that there's some terrain, you know, it's on an angle from the left and it kind of swoops down. So you know those are more mountainous, right? So just that little hint of the way they're showing it, it's like, okay, he's he's parachuting, he's dropping, he's coming in toward mountainous, and this isn't without going over hitting you over the head with it. It's just enough for you to see to get an idea of where he is. And I also love the fact that he's on the thirds. He's on the thirds. He's
Yeah.
to the right, you know? So he's not dead center, right? They're using a lot of negative space around him to make you feel like he's actually falling through the sky, you know, which is fantastic. Great job here.
And there's that little bit of snow on the mountain to really like show you how far up he really is.
Yep.
Like he's up in the mountains and he's fallen. That's so great.
Yeah, little
Love the
decisions were made.
distances.
Little decisions were made here. You know, even the way the clouds kind of are wispy in the background, so it's not just a straight blue backdrop. There's some variation in lighter blues and whites. You know, and the temptation here might be to crop in tighter so the figure looks larger. And I get that, but removing him from his environment kind of uh, dulls the impact of him falling through space. You know what I mean? Through sky. You know how small he is in relation to his environment. You know, so
And he really looks like a parachute jumper here. His character is really being conveyed in this photo. Like he is Crazy Legs is a paratrooper.
yeah, and you know the thing is with O-ring figures, right? There's for the time they were very articulated, obviously. I mean, compared to like Star Wars figures and whatnot. But we're getting used to these days more articulation in your standard figures, even like classified, right? Larger scale, more articulation. Here you have less articulation than say a classified figure, and it's a smaller scale. But it's very important that when you're shooting these guys, that to realize like subtle, very minute uh, movements to the articulation points. Hips, waist, shoulders, elbows, knees, neck, any other like very subtle millimeter can completely change the the emotion or the way the character looks, and you can easily overdo it, right? So here, just very subtle. Like obviously he's falling. You're gonna put the arms out. You're gonna put the legs. You're gonna bend them at the knees. But you could easily overdo it here, where it looks kind of ridiculous. You know what I mean? So they went the subtle route, and I think it worked out the best, especially with all that the way his backpack and his straps, his parachute pack and the straps wrap around him. Kind of does limit the articulation a little bit.
Couldn't agree more. I love this photo.
They also did not feel the need to shoehorn in his weapon, right? And I could see people trying to like figure out where to put that thing, but he doesn't need it here, you know? For all we know, it's packed behind his parachute pack or something. But you don't have to like force it in, you know?
True. True. And it's funny you bring it up because I didn't even think about it because this is such an interesting photo. I
Hmm.
can almost feel him falling through the sky.
Yeah, and what I love about this is the color. His red contrasts with that blue so nicely that and obviously red is a color that stands out a lot. It's why we use it for things like stop signs, and in design you use it for things to call attention, alerts and whatnot. But seeing it sitting against that blue backdrop, man, he really, I hate to use the term pops off the background, but he really does.
Oh yeah, and they really were paying attention to where the light was coming from for everything because you got the glare on his
Hmm.
helmet, and then
Hmm.
you have the light on the side of the mountain, and you have the white of the clouds. You definitely know that the sun is in front of him.
Right, yeah, it's off like camera right somewhere.
Right, which is so great. Which is so great because the last one, the last couple, the light's been towards us.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, and I also like too. This is not photography necessarily related. This is like production, print related. But man, uh, halftone pattern back then, printing. That grain, that halftone pattern really adds beautiful texture to these things. I think in the digital age, we make things very clean and very perfect, and very, dare I say, overproduced. But having that like print texture in these, man, really does add a little something to these.
Absolutely. I love that.
Cool. All right. Anything else to add before we move on?
I don't think so.
All right. All right. Let's go. Let's go to the next one. This one is oh man, every one of these is amazing, but like the settings. Oh God, the settings.
Ah,
The
I love
unique.
this. Let's go.
Now think about this. As a kid, I'm flipping through this catalog and I'm seeing vehicles and figures in completely different settings. It's not as if they built one large diorama and then put every figure and every vehicle in the same diorama in different poses and then filled out the catalog. They built a separate diorama for just this vehicle and these figures. Like this diorama was used here and here only. It's crazy.
Wild. This is so crazy.
The mud all over the vehicle, to weather it to make it look like it's dirty and it has been driving around this whatever this terrain is for a while. I do find it funny they put the dead eye sticker on the front when it's really supposed to be on the back of the turret, but that's kind
They wanted to highlight the sticker.
of
Maybe the customizable
hmm.
aspect of it, maybe. Like
Yeah,
these are yours and make sure you do with them what you want to do with them.
yeah, or they just like slapping them wherever they wanted. Maybe they thought that sticker was interesting and they wanted to show it off, and obviously they're not doing a picture of the rear of the vehicle, so they maybe wanted to just kind of show how cool that sticker was.
It does
Um,
make the vehicle interesting, like
mhm.
being on the front, on the cockpit right there.
Yeah, I probably would have moved the star out of there, but yeah, that it
Yeah,
looks,
I probably would have done this.
and the way they've lit this too is very interesting. How again, we're in a vertical image here. It's kind of center, but a little top center. Um, Again, there's more space in front of the vehicle than there is behind, and that's something to consider when you're showing a character or a vehicle. You kind of want to leave more space in the front, wherever way they're looking, than you want to leave behind, right? So they look they're looking off camera. You want to usually leave a little space in the front. Um, the way they've lit this is back, right, left, top corner, um, which highlights the what do you want to call it? The design, the curves, the lines of the vehicle, those curvy lines that kind of create the shape of the vehicle, really are highlighted here to show you the kind of design. And they've also used terrain where they could highlight the fact that those wheels independently have independent sort of suspension, which is probably one of the coolest aspects of this vehicle.
But besides the awesome laser cannon and it having that deep cockpit that you could just have that little helmet sticking out of, this is such a great vehicle, and I'm glad you pointed out the lighting with those lines, because that's one thing that's standing out to me is the paint job on this vehicle was kind of dull. So unless you had a kind of eye for this vehicle, it was kind of boring looking. But the lighting here with showing off that sharp edge right there, that's really cool. I really like that.
Yeah, I remember getting this as a kid, and I remember putting it together and being kind of disappointed with it. I didn't really love it until later when I gained more of appreciation for just kind of the industrial design of it,
It's so smooth.
Yeah,
a
it's
tank.
narrow and smooth, but that independent suspension really is cool. And Backstop, interestingly enough, the driver's the only Canadian Joe, but he also is if you realize, like, the parts of him that stick out, right, his shoulders and maybe his helmet are the only armored parts of him. So, like, the whole thing's armored, and because he's exposed, they armored his shoulders and his head, which I always found interesting.
I think that's so cool. I think that's cool. Like,
Yeah.
open tank operator with armor in just the right spot so he could be there.
Yeah, I think that
that's
was
cool.
part of the design, yeah. And, like, the terrain here, man, it's just like these big, huge mud things. I don't know if they just put this on a big table and then they put in, like, moss on top, but, man, it looks cool as hell. Like, I that's what I really would love to see in these old catalogs is them putting together the dioramas. You know what I mean? That whole process.
Yeah, because it's got 3 figures, two on the sides. This is not it's kind of small vehicle, but it's not tiny.
Yeah, it's like a medium.
This is a pretty big setup with mud. So you could definitely tell that there's some real dirt there. That's a real, like, cliff that they're coming up on. There's some real, like, height there.
Yeah.
Like, there's some real build up to this.
And I love that they
cool.
They built this whole thing just for this one shot. It's still pretty crazy to me. But I love it, and it's you wonder how many shots they took that you will never see. There's probably tons of negatives out there of different angles and and all that kind of stuff that are lost to time, but this is the one they landed on. This is the one they chose. And I think again, there's a lot of, like, there's leading lines in the vehicle and the angle is pointed, kind of, forward.
The terrain here is so adventure-esque. Like, is there any place on Earth that really comes to mind that looks like where they are?
Yeah, I can't think of any, but probably somewhere. But that also
there
makes
might
you
be
think
somewhere,
that
but it's so cartoonesque. Like, it's so adventure. Like, this is some place I've never been before kind of feeling.
Right.
And that's the adventure aspect I love about it.
Yeah, and, like, again, if you go through all these photos, you're in the Arctic, then you're on a base, then you're in the mountains with Crazy Legs parachuting down, and now you're in some kind of, like, wet, muddy terrain. Who knows, where this could be? Southeast Asia. Who knows?
I know, right? Could be Ireland.
Yeah, you don't know, but they're kind of globetrotting, right, in these catalogs, which is pretty awesome to me. Cool. All right, let's move on. We've got a couple more to go. And speaking of terrain, this next one, probably my favorite shot in this whole catalog, in this whole dossier. and it's God, it's pretty awesome. I'm gonna add it, and there it is. Now it's gonna seem more
So
prominent too because it's a wide, so it's gonna fill our little screen here nice and wide. But man, kind of like a desert tundra, kind of terrain, cracks in the ground, dead trees, and these things like kind of bursting out of the ground. I love the Buzz Boar, and to see them in numbers makes them even more cool.
it's such a sneaky vehicle because it's boring under the ground and you don't know where it's gonna pop up.
Hmm.
Like you can tell, like there's one in the background that you don't see because it's out of frame.
Yeah, yeah. You see the trail it left, but
Yeah,
it's out of
which
frame.
is
Yeah,
great. And
it
you
even
see like
even ran over a tree and snapped it. Do you see that in the
yeah,
trail? Oh, that's
it
great.
looks like it closes up the hole behind it, so all you leave is this like trail behind you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's cool. And
Very
I think
stealth.
like again, they've muddied up the vehicles to make the buzz bores to make them look dirty. You know what I mean? They're not perfectly clean, but sitting in a muddy environment, they look dirty. I do like they give you kind of like the one above ground, the one coming out of the ground still, and then the one that's above ground, but the Vipers opened up the hatch so you can kind of see where the figure goes. You know?
I love that. The different stages of the buzz bore all in
Hmm.
one photo. That's fantastic. And you've got
Yeah,
that
this is.
triangle effect.
Yep, yep. Oh, it's so good. It's so good. I have more and more appreciation for the Buzzboard all the time. So much so that I've got my Buzzboard hanging out right here.
Oh,
Uh,
that's so great. That's
and
so
oh,
great.
but not just that one, but I have the classified one too. Though the 3D printed one that
Oh,
I
that is
got off
so
of. Look
fantastic.
at the size comparison.
Oh my gosh.
Look at that. It's
That
crazy.
is
Well,
wild.
I have a video for this too. You ready?
Shrunken head? No. Regular size? No.
No!
Oh, regular size.
So great.
Yeah, yeah. So I think this is my favorite in this catalog, hands down. The lighting is harsh, which gives you that feeling of a hot, like desert climate. Really hot, um, really desolate. You know what I mean? Just again, another terrain in a different part of the world from the other shots we've looked at.
It there's a whole like group of them, and it definitely looks like they're looking for something.
Hmm.
They've come up on their location,
Yeah.
and this is. I love how this one in the very front is coming out of the ground, so there's no trail behind it. How it's come straight up out of the ground,
Yes. Yes.
and there's
Exactly.
trails behind this one that's more exposed. So you can definitely tell how the buzz bore works. And I
Hmm.
love that about this, how you can really get a feel for the vehicle. It tells you a story about how the vehicle works. So great. Love that.
Yeah, and I like that, when you're grouping things, odd numbers are more interesting to the eye than even. So we have three here. You could have four, but the one's off camera. If you put the fourth one and you fill that space in the top right corner, it becomes so balanced that it's not as interesting. You know what I mean? Having that space open at the top, but with a hint that one was there, and having the other three grouped in a triangle formation toward the bottom left corner makes this more dynamic of a photo, you know?
And from what I understand, this was a super cheap vehicle.
Oh, yeah.
So army building this would have been relatively simple if you
Hmm.
could convince your parents to buy you another one or make them forget about the one that they've already bought you.
Someone told me that. I don't know if it was Wait Vegeta. Somebody said that they got, I'm going to get it wrong, but it was something to the something like their parents got him a Buzz Boar and then maybe got him 2 more or something from a birthday or from a Christmas, so they had, like, multiples, and then their parents were gonna return them, but they were like, "No, no, 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 I want them all. I want the army of these
Yeah,
things."
it's something to the tune of like $3 or $4 per
Yes.
Buzz Boar. They were
Y
insanely cheap.
I have my Buzz Boar box around here somewhere, but I don't remember where I put it. I was rearranging things. But, yeah, it was one of those entry level vehicles, at the time, you know? Um, and back in the day, those were kind of your like, I don't know what you would call it, like little link into like the figures were obviously kind of accessories to the vehicles, but then you had those entry level vehicles that would come out. A lot of them would come out early, early in the year. You get the smaller vehicles would come out, and then later in the year, some of the bigger vehicles would start showing up around, summer or a little bit after, so that you could get them for Christmas. Um, but yeah, we only had one. My brother had it. I didn't have it. But as I got older and I was collecting, I picked up a few Buzz Boars just because I love them so much. I know it's not a lot of people's cup of tea because you've got different segments of fans. You've got the fans that love GI Joe more for the military realistic aspect, but I always found that Cobra is more interesting when they lean into the weird stuff. The Rattler's cool and whatnot. I definitely love that. But if you think about the hiss and the snake armor, the claw, the fang, even the open cockpit, you know, you think about the Buzzbore, the bug, the
Oh
pogo. I mean,
yeah, the
they're
bug.
all the more sci-fi stuff to go up against the slightly more realistic, not in a lot of cases, but the slightly more realistic GI Joe stuff. The
This
contrast was
has
always what was interesting.
this has a slotted Lambo door.
Hmm.
How much more interesting can you get? This is fantastic. The way that the figure
Hmm.
sits in this is just so interesting.
Yeah,
The
design wise, it is like that slotted door is just killer. Design
right,
wise,
because
looks amazing.
in theory, he's sitting upright the whole time, and the outer part of it is moving the cylinder.
Hmm.
So that's it's crazy to think about this thing moving through the earth and
I
how
always loved,
fast
yeah,
it might be going.
right. And obviously there's things that just don't make sense. Like those little missile things would probably just blow up, or like the gun on the side would get ripped off, when it was going underground. But I mean, this is all sci-fi fantasy stuff. I loved this little cobra symbol on the side and how it was a separate piece of plastic. Like they could have just molded that on the gray or made it a sticker, but it's a separate little piece of plastic that snaps into there. And I always thought that was fun and cool. It's all one color. On this 3D printed one, as they drop a missile off it, you can kind of see it's kind of like this real stylized version of a Cobra, but I love it. I love it. So.
Cobra Commander told Destro, he's like, branding is everything. I want everything branded.
They know their branding. Bad guys always brand really well. All right. Anything else to add before we move on to the last of the photos?
I'm sure we could talk some more about this, but no, let's go ahead and move on.
Okay. All right. So we're going to go from one of the coolest Cobra vehicles to one of the most derided Joe vehicles of all time. Well, two of the most derided Joe vehicles of all time. So basically, you have two butts of jokes in this one photo. You've got the Coastal Defender on its side, which mainframe is trying to pull back onto its wheels, and then you've got the road toad being towed by, it looks like, the Persuader we saw earlier, and again in a different environment. Now this looks like more of like kind of a rocky, slightly mountainous kind of mountain road, maybe. Um, yeah, interesting. Two more entry level vehicles into the line, and both towables. Interestingly enough, Why did you choose this one to be in your 6th?
Oh wow. Oh boy. I'm glad you had this one be the last one because there's so much going on here. I mean, we got a winch in action.
That's right.
We got a winch
We have a winch
in action.
We've got a real working winch. That's right.
Tie it to that thing there, and then pull down this thing here, and then pull it back up
here. And we've got characters using it in a real way. Like this thing is fallen off. There's so much character in this photo. And you've got Mainframe back there, one of my favorite G.I. Joes. You've got Law, another favorite. And you've got Lifeline doing... He doesn't hold a gun, so what else is he going to do? He's going to winch stuff. He's going to winch stuff.
It's a very well-balanced photo with it like going from bottom left corner to top right corner. Kind of that angle of the story. And you're right. Everyone's playing a part here, doing something else. It's telling a story in a very simple way. You know, I know what happened here. The package, the Coastal Defender tipped over. So you brought in the road toad to help get it onto its wheels again. You know, and it's a great use for this. It's telling you, oh, this is what the road toad does. You know.
It's just a little mobile AAA unit.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's silver too, like AAA. Yeah, I love it. I mean, the pose on Mainframe is fantastic. By the way, another great simple pose.
And you have Lifeline down there hooking up the winch, like crouched down.
Yep,
I love that. And Law up there giving the orders, maybe.
I think he's trying to find Order. It looks like he's looking in the distance, like, Order, get back here. We're about to leave.
We're almost done. Get back here.
Yeah, this is fantastic. A little bit, you see a little bit of the Persuader just to know that yes, it's towable. It's hooked to the toe hook. You know, it's great. The lighting here again is great. You know, all this lighting is like single source, supposed to be the sun, very powerful light, but you know, not so powerful enough where they're obviously using some sort of bounce on the other side just to kind of so it doesn't get, you know, super contrasty. But I don't know. I at first you might look at this and be like, yeah, it's a road toad, a Coastal Defender. But when you start to look at how they've laid it out and how they've composed the image and how they cropped the image, yeah, it's telling a great story here. And this is something to really think about. When you're taking toy photos, and you do it well, Skydrow. I mean, you're one of the best at this. You, instead of just setting up a bunch of figures to look cool, you can set them up in a way to tell a story, you know, in a single shot. And this is telling a story. It's doing the job.
And they really took a lot of time to make this diorama for this shot too, which is very Sunbow cartoon-esque feeling. But they've got the foreground there with the moss on the side of the road, this little like mountainous road that they're on. But then like you've got this like culvert with the different tree. So there's like a whole different type of green next to the moss, and you've got this mountainous area. Like this could literally be anywhere. It could be in Colorado, we could be in Asia, we could be in Russia, this could literally be anywhere on Earth. And I think that's really cool worldly aspect of G.I. Joe.
Yeah, and I do like two simple, subtle things, like a little bit on the road toad, but more so on the Coastal Defender. The wheels are muddy, as if it's been, you know, in use, and I find it a lot where it drives me kind of nuts when I see pictures, especially classified scale stuff, of like a vamp in the middle of some setting, and the wheels are like squeaky clean, like off the showroom floor, and you'd be like, yeah, but would be dirty because it's sitting in mud. Where's the mud? You know what I mean? It's literally just set into the scene. So that's something to consider when you're setting up a shot. If the vehicle is supposed to have driven to that location, it's probably got some dirt on it. You know.
And separately, these vehicles could be very boring, but all together with like the figures like
Mm-hmm.
messing with them and like the winch
Yeah.
working to tow the other one up, it all gives it like a certain amount of purpose. Like you could show your parents this photo and they could show up to the toy store and be like, "Oh, there's different pieces to this photo that we have to buy. Like
Mm-hmm.
we've got to buy this and we have to buy this, and there's 3 figures that are separate." Like the photographer did a really good way of like cross-platforming this, so you had to buy the whole photo.
Yeah, from a marketing standpoint, you're looking at like the playability, the world building, all of that stuff, right? Show the features of the toy. So you're showing the winch. It's also
Super
that's the
fun.
purpose of the road toad. So you're
Super fun.
showing, yeah, the playability of it, the world building where you can hook it to a bigger vehicle. So now I want to buy the bigger vehicle so I could tow the thing, So that's and the figures are playing out the scene. So you need the figures to support the little vehicle. So it's all nice world building here. Cool.
I love
All
it.
right. Any last words about any of this? We've gone through your 6. We are at
No,
the
no,
conclusion. You wanna
no.
you wanna revisit any of these? You wanna
Last thing I'll say about this is the red and the green really, really pop out
Mhm.
off of this, even though that road is so bright.
Yes.
I could go on about this photo for a little while, but
Well,
no.
you know what else too is there's always been there's like I said, there's different fans of G.I. Joe and there's always the conversation about like or you see people customize things and they'll get rid of the orange cannon here and paint it green. Or, Lifeline's all red and that's kind of weird. Or you don't like the orange missiles on the coastal defender. But if everything was green and camo or black or brown or green, different shades of green, everything gets kind of boring. It all becomes monochrome, real easy. There's no pops of color anywhere. So everything kind of just like as you're selling these to kids. And on the toy shelves, you want some of these colors to pop out. So strategically making things like missiles orange or a figure to bright color to mix in with a bunch of figures that aren't, mainframe's gray, Hawk was brown and camo, Leatherneck is all camo, but then you got Lifeline sitting next to him, stands out. So these pops of color within the line, if you're thinking of like a line plan, really create a nice, interesting assortment. And I do like the little pops of color personally.
Absolutely.
All right, Skydrow. Well, let's wrap this up then. All right, so I don't have anything to close other than I'm going to add this back to the stage. I'm gonna remove this. Oh, I removed you. I didn't mean to do that. Okay, remove that, add that. Okay, so for those who, like I said earlier in the episode, Skydrow is on, that's his name right there, Skydrowalker on social platforms. Yeah, give Skydrow a follow, and I'm going to switch to this, and then I've got to do this. That's stupid. Now, Skydrow, you're not on camera, and I get it. I am on camera, but I appreciate you hanging out and doing this. This is the first episode. A little rough. I'm figuring it out. I'll get more under the belt. We'll smooth this out over time. Went a little longer than I was hoping. Over an hour, which is crazy.
Yeah.
But
6 photos, and they were all super interesting. And
yeah, there's a lot to talk about.
I can't tell you how much of a pleasure it is to be here to talk to you about G.I. Joe and photography. And I'm honored, and I think it's so great that you're doing this again. Love that you're back doing it.
Yeah, I know. I had the Plastic Battles radio, but man, you might spend 2 hours recording an episode, and I might spend like 8, 12, 16 hours editing the thing. It just was not feasible. This, I'll have to do some editing, but it's not going to be the same kind of weight that the other one had. And I'll be doing different kinds of episodes. So we'll have these JOETOGRAPHER reviews where we review old catalog photography. We'll be doing other ones where we just talk about modern photography and what Joe photographers are doing now. We'll do ones where I kind of show my behind the scenes process, where maybe it's just me, or I'll have someone like you on Skydrowalker. We'll talk about your process, something like that. So it'll be a mix, but we'll get this going.
Awesome.
All right. Well, again, thanks, Skydrowalker, for joining me on this one, and hope to have you back again at some point in the near future.
Thank you so much. Yo, Joe.
Yo, Joe.